The outcast engineer. Elena Martinez stood at her workbench in the dimly lit corner of Houston's Orbital Engineering Division, her hands covered in grease as she tinkered with what her colleagues mockingly called her impossible engine. The other engineers, with their pristine lab coats and theoretical models, had long since gone home, leaving her alone with her experiments, just the way she preferred it. The late-night silence was broken by the facility-wide alert system. All senior engineering staff report to Main Bay 7. Priority Alpha. This is not a drill. Elena almost ignored it. As the division's youngest engineer at 28, she wasn't usually included in senior staff meetings. But something in the alert's tone made her put down her wrench and head toward the main bay. The massive doors of Bay 7 were already open when she arrived, revealing a sight that made her stop in her tracks. A ship unlike anything she'd ever seen hovered above the landing pad, its surface seemed to ripple like liquid metal, defying every principle of aerodynamics she knew. Admiral Jackson stood at the center of the gathering crowd, his weathered face illuminated by the strange vessel's ethereal glow. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his voice grave, "what you're about to hear is classified at the highest levels. 3 days ago, we received a transmission from the Drachnid Empire." A murmur ran through the assembled engineers. Everyone had heard rumors about the Drachnids, an advanced civilization that had made first contact 6 months ago but had remained mysteriously distant since then. "They're sending us." The admiral paused, choosing his words carefully, "a cultural exchange representative. Someone who will study our technology and share their knowledge in return." Elena felt the hair on the back of her neck rise. Something in the admiral's tone suggested there was more to this story. The ship's surface suddenly rippled more intensely, and a section melted away to form a seamless doorway. The figure that emerged made Elena's breath catch in her throat. Tall and graceful, with skin that seemed to shimmer with an internal light, the alien was unmistakably royal in bearing. Her eyes, though, they held something Elena recognized all too well, the look of someone trapped. "This is Princess Nixis of the High Houses," Admiral Jackson announced. "She will be working with our engineering division for the foreseeable future." Elena watched as the princess descended the ship's ramp, her movements too perfect, too controlled. She'd grown up in a diplomatic family, spent enough time around politicians to recognize when someone was being coerced. This was no cultural exchange, this was something else entirely. The other engineers stepped back slightly as Nixis approached, a mixture of fear and awe on their faces. But Elena stood her ground, and for a brief moment, their eyes met. In that instant, she saw something that shocked her, not alienness, but recognition. The same loneliness, the same frustration of being underestimated and contained. "We'll need someone to serve as the princess's primary liaison," Admiral Jackson continued. "Someone who can help her understand our technological capabilities and—" "I volunteer," Elena said, surprising herself as much as everyone else. The admiral turned to her, clearly taken aback by the interruption. "Engineer Martinez," he said slowly, "this assignment requires someone with extensive experience in—" "In what?" Elena challenged, her usual frustration with authority breaking through. "In following outdated protocols? In being afraid to try new approaches? With all due respect, Admiral, if we're going to learn anything meaningful from this exchange, we need someone who's willing to think differently." The silence that followed was deafening. Elena could feel her colleagues' stares, could practically hear them thinking about how she'd finally gone too far. But then something unexpected happened. Princess Nixis spoke, her voice carrying an otherworldly harmony that made everyone turn. "I agree with Engineer Martinez's assessment. Innovation requires those willing to challenge existing paradigms." Admiral Jackson's expression was unreadable, but Elena could see the calculations happening behind his eyes. Finally, he nodded. "Very well. Engineer Martinez, you'll be Princess Nixis's primary contact. I expect daily progress reports." As the crowd began to disperse, Elena approached the princess. Up close, she could see fine lines of what looked like circuitry running just beneath her iridescent skin. But it was the tension in her shoulders, the carefully maintained poise that interested Elena more. "I have a workshop," Elena said quietly. "It's not much, but it's private. Would you like to see what I'm working on?" Nixis tilted her head slightly, studying Elena with eyes that seemed to shift color like oil on water. "You are not afraid of me?" "No," Elena replied honestly. "But I think you're afraid of something. And maybe, if we trust each other, we can figure out what to do about that." For the first time, a genuine expression crossed the princess's face, the smallest of smiles, but real. "Lead the way, Engineer Martinez." As they walked through the darkened facility, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just stepped onto a path that would change everything. She didn't know what game the Drachnid Empire was playing, sending their princess here under the guise of cultural exchange. But she intended to find out. And maybe, just maybe, she'd finally have someone who understood what it was like to be the odd one out, the one who saw things differently. Someone who could help her prove that her impossible engine wasn't so impossible after all. What neither of them knew was that back on the landing pad, the Drachnid ship was transmitting a message to its empire: "The package has been delivered. Proceed with Phase 1. Breaking the chains." 3 weeks had passed since Princess Nixis's arrival, and Elena's workshop had transformed. Holographic displays flickered alongside traditional blueprints, and pieces of both human and Drachnid technology littered every surface. But more than the physical space, it was the dynamic between the two women that had changed most dramatically. Elena watched as Nixis traced her fingers along the curved surface of the impossible engine, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Your approach is unorthodox," the princess said, her voice carrying that musical quality that still caught Elena off guard sometimes. "You're using atmospheric friction as a power source." "Everyone else thinks it's crazy," Elena replied, making an adjustment to the prototype's cooling system. "They say the energy requirements are too high, that it'll never sustain itself." "They lack vision," Nixis said simply. She paused, then added more quietly, "much like my father's court." Elena set down her tools. Over the past weeks, she'd learned to recognize these moments, when Nixis's careful diplomatic facade cracked just enough to reveal glimpses of truth. "You still haven't told me why you're really here." The princess's skin flickered, the circuitry beneath pulsing with what Elena had come to recognize as anxiety. "Perhaps because once I do, you'll see me differently." She turned to face Elena fully. "What do you know about the Drachnid Empire's energy crisis?" "Only what's in the official briefings," Elena answered. "That your civilization's power requirements have grown beyond your current capabilities." Nixis laughed, but there was no humor in it. "A diplomatic way of saying we're dying. Our cities are powered by quantum cores that are reaching critical instability." "The Empire's solution?" She gestured to herself. "Send the disappointment of a princess to Earth under the guise of cultural exchange, while preparing for a full-scale invasion." Elena felt her blood run cold. "Invasion? My presence here serves two purposes," Nixis continued, her voice bitter. "First, to assess Earth's technological capabilities for conquest. Second, to serve as a convenient catalyst for war when I inevitably meet with an accident that can be blamed on humans." The implications hit Elena like a physical blow. "They sent you here to die." "My father sent me here to be useful, finally." Nixis's skin had gone almost translucent, her internal circuitry a stark pattern of distress. "I was always a disappointment, too interested in engineering, too questioning of our traditions. This way, my death serves the Empire's needs." Elena's mind raced, connecting pieces she hadn't seen before. The strange transmissions she'd detected from the Drachnid ship, the increasing number of maintenance vessels appearing at the edge of Earth's solar system, the way Admiral Jackson's security teams watched Nixis like they were expecting trouble. "Your engine," Nixis said suddenly, turning back to the prototype. "You've solved it, haven't you?" The sustainable energy problem? Theoretically, Elena admitted. But it's never been tested at scale. The principles work in simulations, but it could power a city, Nixis finished. Without quantum cores, without the risk of catastrophic failure. She straightened, and Elena saw something new in her eyes, not resignation, but determination. We have to prove it works. We? Elena asked, though she already knew she was committed, whatever the answer. I refuse to be the spark that ignites a war, Nixis declared. If we can demonstrate a viable alternative to quantum cores, show that cooperation is more valuable than conquest. She trailed off, looking uncertain for the first time. But it would mean betraying my father, my people. No, Elena interrupted firmly. It would mean saving them. From a war they might not win, from an energy crisis that's destroying them. She stepped closer to Nixis, noting how the princess no longer flinched away from human proximity. You're not betraying your people by preventing their destruction. A sudden alert from Elena's security console interrupted them. Admiral Jackson was on his way down, with a full security team. They're moving faster than I expected, Nixis said, her voice tight. Elena, you have to understand, the Empire doesn't just want Earth's resources. They want its people. Human adaptability, your capacity for innovation, my father believes these traits can be harvested, engineered into our own species. Elena's mind flashed to her research files, her prototype designs. If the Admiral was coming now, it meant they'd intercepted something, learned something they weren't supposed to know. They had minutes, at most. The ventilation shaft in the corner, she said, already moving to her workbench. It connects to the old maintenance tunnels. I used to use them to work late without security knowing. She grabbed a tablet, quickly downloading her engine designs and research data. Take this. Get to Hangar 12, there's a partially restored shuttle there. I can give you about 15 minutes before they realize the security cameras are showing a loop. Come with me, Nixis said, catching Elena's arm. They'll arrest you, maybe worse. Elena shook her head, already typing commands into her console. Someone has to stay to clear your exit path and wipe the data. Besides, she managed a grim smile, they'll be watching for 2 people, not 1. Nixis hesitated for a moment longer, then did something completely unexpected. She pressed her hand to Elena's forehead, and Elena felt a strange tingling sensation. What? A copy of my technical knowledge, Nixis explained quickly. Everything I know about Drachnid technology and weaknesses. Use it. She moved to the ventilation shaft, then turned back one last time. Elena Martinez, you are the most remarkable human I've ever met. Go, Elena said, trying to ignore the pounding in her head as alien knowledge integrated with her consciousness. And Nixis? Prove them all wrong. As the princess disappeared into the shaft, Elena turned to her console and began erasing everything. Behind her, she could hear boots in the corridor, getting closer. The game was about to change. She just hoped she'd given Nixis enough time to change the rules. The spark of revolution. Elena sat in her interrogation cell, watching the shadows lengthen across the floor. 3 days had passed since Nixis's escape, and she'd spent most of them here, repeating the same story. She had no idea the princess was planning to flee, no idea where she'd gone, no idea about any invasion plans. What the interrogators didn't know was that Elena's mind was far from idle. The technical knowledge Nixis had transferred to her was slowly integrating, revealing secrets about Drachnid technology that made her previous understanding seem childlike. More importantly, it was showing her exactly how vulnerable the Empire really was. The door opened, and Admiral Jackson entered alone. He looked tired, his uniform slightly rumpled. Engineer Martinez, we've confirmed your story about being in your workshop at the time of the princess's disappearance. You're free to go. Elena stood carefully, watching his face. Just like that. Just like that. He gestured to the door. Though your security clearance has been temporarily suspended, pending review. As they walked through the facility's corridors, Elena noticed something odd. The guards were too alert, the other engineers too scarce. Something had changed while she was detained. "They're here, aren't they?" she asked quietly. "The Drachnid ships?" Jackson's stride hitched slightly. "That's classified information, Engineer Martinez." "How many?" He stopped, turning to face her. 7 vessels entered the solar system yesterday. They're demanding the return of Princess Nixis and threatening military action. He studied her face carefully. "You really don't know where she went, do you?" "No," Elena answered truthfully. "But I know what they really want, and it's not the princess." "Enlighten me." "They're dying, Admiral. Their power systems are failing, and they think Earth has something they need." She tapped her temple. "And thanks to what Nixis shared with me, I know exactly how to stop them." Jackson's expression remained neutral, but his eyes sharpened. "My office. Now." Once inside, Elena laid out everything she knew: the Empire's energy crisis, their plans to harvest human biological traits, the weaknesses in their supposedly superior technology. As she spoke, she could see Jackson's skepticism turning to strategic calculation. "Even if what you're saying is true," he said finally, "we're still technologically outmatched. Their ships alone are powered by unstable quantum cores that we can disrupt," Elena interrupted. "And my engine design, combined with Nixis's knowledge." She pulled out a tablet and quickly sketched a modification to her original plans. "We can build these in secret, Admiral. Small scale at first, but enough to power a resistance. You're talking about a guerrilla war against an interstellar empire. I'm talking about showing them we're not as primitive as they think." Elena's fingers flew across the tablet, incorporating Drachnid principles into her human engineering. "They expect us to either surrender or fight conventionally. They don't expect us to understand their technology well enough to subvert it." A sudden commotion outside interrupted them. Jackson's security console lit up with alerts, communications from the Drachnid fleet. "They're moving closer," Jackson muttered, reading the reports. "Demanding immediate negotiations." Elena's tablet pinged, a message through an encrypted channel she'd never seen before. Her heart jumped when she saw the signature. It was from Nixis. "Admiral," she said, showing him the message, "I think our resistance just got bigger." The message was brief but clear: multiple Drachnid colony worlds in revolt. Father's power base fracturing. Need coordination with Earth forces. Elena's engine designs spreading through underground networks. They're calling it the Liberation Technology. Jackson read the message twice, then looked at Elena with new respect. "How quickly can you scale up production of your engine?" "With proper resources. 2 weeks for the first prototype. But we'll need a secure facility, off the grid." She hesitated, then added, "And we'll need to trust that there are others in the Empire like Nixis, people who want change." "You're asking me to put Earth's fate in the hands of alien rebels and untested technology. I'm asking you to believe in human ingenuity combined with Drachnid knowledge." Elena pulled up the schematics for her modified engine. "Look at this, Admiral. Really look. This isn't just about defending Earth anymore. This is about fundamental change, for both our species." Jackson was quiet for a long moment, studying the designs. Finally, he straightened. "There's an abandoned mining facility in Nevada. Deep underground, off all official records." He tapped his security console, initiating a secure protocol. "I'm authorizing Project Phoenix. You'll have whatever resources you need." "Phoenix?" Elena asked. Rising from the ashes, Jackson explained. "Because one way or another, after this, nothing will be the same." As if to emphasize his words, the facility's lights flickered. The Drachnid ships were testing Earth's defenses, probing for weaknesses. But for the first time since this began, Elena felt real hope. She opened a reply to Nixus's message, "Production beginning. Keep the underground networks ready. When we move fast." The revolution was starting, not with a bang, but with the quiet hum of an impossible engine coming to life in the desert depths. And this time, humanity wouldn't be fighting alone. In orbit, the Drachnid ships continued their intimidating display, unaware that their greatest threat wasn't Earth's military might, but the combined ingenuity of two unlikely allies who refused to accept the limitations others had placed on them. The next few weeks would determine everything, not just for Earth, but for every world under the Empire's control. Elena looked at her engine designs one more time, seeing in them not just machinery, but hope. "Ready or not," she whispered, "here we come. Warriors of two worlds." Deep beneath the Nevada desert, Project Phoenix had transformed the abandoned mining facility into something that existed nowhere else in the universe, a perfect fusion of human and Drachnid technology. Elena stood in the central chamber, surrounded by the soft blue glow of a dozen prototype engines, each one humming with clean, stable energy. "Status report," Admiral Jackson's voice crackled through the comm system. He hadn't left the Pentagon in days, coordinating with military leaders worldwide as the Drachnid fleet grew to 12 ships. "The network is ready," Elena replied, checking the quantum-encrypted communication array they'd built using Nixus's knowledge. "We're receiving signals from resistance cells on 3 Drachnid colony worlds. They've successfully implemented the engine designs. But something was wrong." Elena could feel it in the way the resistance communications had grown more desperate over the past few days. She pulled up the latest message from Nixus, which had arrived encrypted in bursts of static. "Elena, my father knows. He's discovered the scope of our resistance. The colony worlds are being locked down. He's ordered the execution of anyone found with liberation technology. We have to move faster." A sudden alert flashed across Elena's screens, unauthorized access to Earth's defense satellites. She traced the signal and felt her blood freeze. "Admiral, we have a problem. Someone inside the Pentagon is transmitting our defense protocols to the Drachnid fleet." "Impossible," Jackson snapped. "Those systems are isolated." "They're using Drachnid encryption," Elena interrupted, her fingers flying across the holographic interface. "Someone high-ranking. Someone who's had access to." She stopped as the realization hit her. "Admiral, where's General Morrison?" The silence on the other end told her everything. General Morrison, head of Earth Space Defense Command, had been suspiciously supportive of diplomatic solutions lately. Too supportive. "Lock down the facility," Jackson ordered. "They're coming." Elena was already moving, activating the security protocols they'd developed. The prototype engines hummed louder, powering up the facility's defenses. But she knew it wouldn't be enough, not against a full Drachnid assault. "Elena." Nixus's voice came through their private channel, clearer now. "The resistance on Drachnid Prime is larger than we thought. My father's own generals are turning against him. But he's desperate. He's ordered the fleet to take Earth's defense technology by force." "How long?" "Hours, at most." "Elena." Nixus paused, and Elena could hear the pain in her voice. "I should be there." "You're doing more good coordinating the resistance from inside," Elena assured her, even as she initiated emergency protocols. "Besides, I've got a plan." It wasn't entirely a lie. The knowledge Nixus had given her included something she hadn't told anyone, not even Jackson. The Drachnid quantum cores weren't just unstable, they were interconnected. If one failed catastrophically, it could trigger a cascade through their entire fleet. "Admiral," she said, switching channels. "I need you to trust me. When I give the signal, I want every military installation on Earth to power up their defense systems at exactly the same time. That'll drain our power grid." "Yes," Elena agreed, "but it'll also create an electromagnetic pulse unlike anything the Drachnids have seen." And their ship sensors. She smiled grimly. Let's just say they're about to get a taste of their own medicine. Warning klaxons blared through the facility. The Drachnid fleet was moving into attack position. On her screens, Elena could see General Morrison had fled the Pentagon, leaving chaos in his wake. But he'd failed in his primary mission. The Resistance's engine designs were already spreading too far to be stopped. All Resistance cells, this is Phoenix Base, Elena broadcast on their secure channel. Begin synchronized power-up of all Liberation technology engines. Timing is critical. Acknowledgements came in from across the solar system and beyond, hidden Resistance fighters on Earth, colony worlds, even ships within the Drachnid fleet itself. Each one represented a small act of defiance, a choice to believe in something better than conquest. Elena's fingers hovered over the activation sequence. In her mind, she could see Nixus's face, could feel the weight of two civilizations' futures hanging in the balance. The Drachnid Empire had expected to find a primitive world ripe for conquest. Instead, they'd found something far more dangerous: hope. Phoenix Base, Nixus's voice came through one final time. We're ready. And Elena, thank you for showing us another way. Above the facility, the Drachnid ships began their attack run, their quantum cores pulsing with deadly energy. But in underground bunkers, hidden Resistance bases, and secret laboratories across two worlds, thousands of impossible engines hummed to life, their combined power building towards something unprecedented. Elena took a deep breath and pressed the activation sequence. Let's show them what humanity and Drachnids can do together. The sky above Earth was about to become either a graveyard or a revolution's birthplace. And Elena Martinez, the engineer no one had believed in, was about to change the course of two civilizations forever. As the energy built around her, Elena sent one final thought toward the stars, toward her friend who had risked everything for change. See you on the other side, princess. A new dawn. The sky above Earth erupted in a spectacular display of light and energy as thousands of Liberation technology engines activated simultaneously. The wave of electromagnetic energy rippled outward, catching the Drachnid fleet in its embrace. Elena watched through the facility's sensors as the carefully coordinated pulse hit their quantum cores. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, one by one, the massive ships began to lose power. It's working, Elena breathed, watching the cascade of failures she'd predicted. Admiral, are you seeing this? Confirmed, Jackson's voice was tight with tension. Their weapons are powering down. But Elena, their life support systems are failing too. She'd known this might happen. The Drachnid ships were so dependent on their quantum cores that even backup systems were integrated with them. Without power, thousands of Drachnid crew members would die. Nixus, Elena called through their secure channel. Now. Across the Drachnid fleet, hidden Resistance members sprang into action. Emergency pods launched from the disabled ships, carrying crews to safety. But these weren't random evacuations, each pod was equipped with a miniature Liberation technology engine, pre-positioned by Resistance fighters. The Emperor's ship is still operational, Jackson reported. They had better shielding. A new voice cut across all channels, deep, resonant, and furious. You dare. Emperor Vex's transmission overrode all others. You would destroy centuries of Drachnid supremacy with your primitive technology. Father. Nixus's voice joined the broadcast, and Elena's heart leapt to hear her friend speaking with such authority. Look around you. Your fleet is disabled. Your crews are abandoning ship. But they're not dying, they're choosing a different path. Traitor, Vex spat. You would side with these humans. I side with life, Nixus replied. With innovation over stagnation. With cooperation over conquest. There was a pause, then, Elena, are you ready? Elena smiled, her fingers dancing across her console. Always. Together, they activated the final phase of their plan. Every rescue pod's engine synchronized, creating a network of stable power sources around the disabled fleet. But more than that, they demonstrated something the Emperor had never thought possible: Drachnid and human technology working in perfect harmony. Your choice is simple, Father, Nixus continued. Continue this attack and watch your empire crumble, or embrace change. The liberation technology doesn't just solve our energy crisis, it proves that we're stronger together than apart. On Elena's screens, she could see more ships appearing, vessels from the colony worlds, each one powered by the new engines. The resistance wasn't just a scattered movement anymore, it was a revolution. Emperor Vex's silence stretched for what felt like eternity. Finally, he spoke again, his voice heavy with resignation. You have your mother's spirit, Nixus. She too could see possibilities I was blind to. Does that mean I will not see our civilization die to preserve my pride? Vex declared. Open negotiations. The next few hours passed in a blur of diplomatic communications and technical coordination. Elena worked tirelessly, helping coordinate the rescue of stranded crew members and the stabilization of damaged ships. Through it all, she kept thinking about how far they'd come, from a discarded princess and an overlooked engineer to the architects of peace between worlds. 3 days later, Elena stood in the Nevada facility's main bay, watching as a shuttle landed. The door opened, and a familiar figure emerged. Princess, Elena started to bow, but Nixus pulled her into an embrace instead. I think we're past titles, Nixus laughed. Besides, I'm not here as a princess. I'm here as the new head of the Joint Scientific Council. Elena raised an eyebrow. Joint Earth and Drachnid cooperation, Nixus explained. Father's final act before abdicating was to establish it. We'll be overseeing the implementation of liberation technology across both our worlds. She smiled. I told them I wouldn't accept the position unless my co-chair was the most brilliant engineer I know. Me? Elena stared at her friend in shock. But I'm just the woman who changed 2 civilizations, Admiral Jackson interrupted, entering the bay. Congratulations, Director Martinez. Elena looked between them, then at the prototype engines still humming peacefully in the background. You know, this is just the beginning, right? There's so much more we could discover together. That's exactly what I'm counting on, Nixus said, her skin glowing with excitement. Ready to change the universe? Elena thought about her old workshop, about all the times people had dismissed her ideas as impossible. She thought about a princess who had seen possibility where others saw only limitations. She thought about 2 civilizations on the brink of war, now standing on the threshold of something extraordinary. Always, she replied, and meant it with all her heart. Above them, Earth's sky had never looked more peaceful. But it wasn't the peace of stagnation or conquest, it was the peace of possibility, of innovation, of 2 worlds learning they were stronger together than apart. The impossible, it seemed, was just the beginning. In the years that followed, the story would be told countless times, how a human engineer and an alien princess had turned scrap into sovereignty, had transformed cast-offs into revolution. But perhaps the most important part wasn't the technology or the politics or even the averted war. It was the simple truth that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe isn't weapons or energy or even advanced technology. Sometimes, it's just 2 people who refuse to accept the limitations others place on them, who dare to imagine something better. And sometimes, that's enough to change everything.